If nobody could ever see you work, what would you still create? No likes, no views, no comments, no followers, no audience. Just you and the thing you're making. I asked myself that question recently, and the answer made me realize why I had been slowly burning out. Not because I was creating too much, but because I had forgotten why I started creating in the first place. A few months ago, I noticed something strange. The more I focused on growing my YouTube channel, the less I wanted to make games, which is what I'm currently enjoying. Every upload felt personal. If a video did well, I felt excited. If it didn't, I questioned everything. The quality of my work, my ideas, and sometimes even myself. What started as a creative outlet slowly became a source of anxiety, and eventually I found myself staring at my projects with less and less enthusiasm. That's when I started asking myself what was actually happening. At first, I thought I was losing motivation. Then I thought maybe I needed more discipline, or maybe I was simply experiencing burnout. But the more I reflected on it, the more I realized something. Creating wasn't what was draining me. The need to be appreciated was. And the strange thing is that this pattern starts long before we become artists, developers, writers, musicians, or content creators. It starts when we are kids. When you're a child, you create naturally. You draw because you want to draw. You invent stories, games, worlds, and strange little projects simply because something inside of you wants them to exist. The reward is the process itself. Then you run to show someone what you made. Your parents smile, they tell you it's amazing, they give you attention. And attention feels good, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's completely natural. It's what a child needs more. But without realizing it, a new connection starts forming. Creating becomes associated with appreciation. You make something, you receive praise, you feel good. And little by little, part of your focus shifts from the joy of creating to the reward waiting at the end. Then school comes along and strengthens the lesson. Good grades are rewarded, bad grades are punished. But school introduces something even more powerful: comparison. Now it's not enough to simply do well, you have to do better than someone else. Your value starts being measured throughout outcomes. Numbers, rankings, results. And over time, many of us internalized the same message. What matters isn't the experience, what matters is the outcome. The process becomes secondary, the result becomes everything. The problem is that we carry this mindset into adulthood, especially as creatives, because the grades disappear, but the numbers don't. Now, the numbers are views, followers, subscribers, downloads, sales, engagement. The scoreboard changes, but the game stays the same. And suddenly, creativity becomes complicated. You start comparing your work to people who seem more successful. You start wondering why they are growing faster. You start questioning whether your ideas are good enough. And eventually, something strange happens. The thing that once gave you energy starts taking energy away from you. This is exactly where I found myself. I started this channel because I wanted to share the games I was making. That's it. I wasn't thinking about growth strategies. I wasn't thinking about analytics. I simply wanted to connect with people who loved the same things I loved. But slowly, my attention drifted. I checked statistics more often, I compared myself to other creators, I became attached to outcomes. And the more I focused on being seen, the less connected I felt to what I was making. The excitement and the curiosity started fading, and even my desire to make games started to do the same. And that's when I realized something that made me uncomfortable. I wasn't creating to express myself anymore. I was creating to be validated. Not completely, but enough for it to change my relationship with the work. Enough for every result to feel like a judgment. Enough for every failure to feel personal. And enough for creativity to stop feeling free. So I started looking for answers. I watched videos about growing an audience, videos about beating the algorithm. And while some of the advice was useful, almost all of it shared the same underlying assumption. Create what performs. Create what people want. Create what gets attention. And the more I listened, the more I felt that something was missing. Because nobody seemed to be asking whether the thing that performs best is actually the thing you want to spend your time making. And that question led me to another one. The question I asked at the beginning. If nobody could see you work, would you still create? For me, that question changed everything. Because it forced me to separate what I genuinely loved from what I wanted recognition for. It exposed how much of my motivation had become performative, how much of my creative identity had become tied to being seen, and it reminded me of something I had forgotten. The things I love most are usually the things I do anyway, even if nobody noticed, because their value exists in the experience itself. Now, I'm not saying appreciation is bad. Being appreciated feels wonderful. Sharing what we make is part of being human. Connection and recognition matters. But appreciation works best as a bonus, not as the destination. The moment validation becomes the reason we create, we hand our satisfaction over to things we can't control. Algorithms, trends, numbers, and that's a dangerous trade, because no amount of external validation can permanently replace the fulfillment that comes from loving the process itself. Maybe that's why so many creatives burn out, not because they stop loving creativity, but because somewhere along the way, creativity becomes a performance instead of an expression. And performances are exhausting. Expression isn't. I don't think we can completely erase our desire for recognition. We are human. We all want to be seen. But I do think we can choose where we place our focus. Every time we catch ourselves obsessing over numbers, every time we compare ourselves to someone else, or every time we start measuring our worth through outcomes, we can return to a simpler question. What would I create if nobody could see it? Because hidden inside that answer is probably the reason you started creating in the first place. And maybe that's where the joy still is, where we could find ourselves again. So, let me ask you one last time. If nobody could ever see you work, what would you still create? I'd love to hear your answer.